Sha! Whew. That was nothing. Thank goodness. Shaboom! Oh, sorry about that, Seven Dwarfs. Making a bit of a mess, undoing that whole whistle while you work thing that Snow White did to your house. Oh dear, we are in trouble, as Filch would say.
Salagadoola, menchikaboola, bibbidi-bobbidi-boo. Put them together and what have you got? Bibbidi-bobbidi-boo. Salagadoola, menchikaboola, bibbidi-bobbidi-boo. It'll do magic, believe it or not. Bibbidi-bobbidi-boo. Now salagadoola means a menchikaboola-roo. But the thingamabob that does the job is bibbidi-bobbidi-boo. Salagadoola, menchikaboola, bibbidi-bobbidi-boo. Put them together and what have you got?
Charlie, do you believe in fairy godmothers?
I know this much. There are no fairy godmothers in Manhattan.
Annabelle is about to meet her fairy godmother. And his name is Murray.
Ta-da! You don't look a whole lot like the one in Cinderella.
The hair.
I don't think it's the hair.
He's short on experience.
Something tells me we're not in Manhattan anymore.
I guess I missed the off-ramp, huh?
He's long on excuses.
Are you saying this is my fault?
Honey, no, not at all. Well, not entirely.
And he's showing Annabelle there's no such thing as a simple wish.
Dad?
Nothing's cast in stone. Well, with the exception of your father.
Now,
I brought you a little something from my garden. Is that the apple of a witch? You bet it is.
Their troubles are growing.
No fairy godmother would ever do a spell like this. This is the dark stuff. This is witchcraft.
This spell must be lifted before midnight. After that, your father will remain a statue forever.
And Murray is about to prove that sometimes the best fairy godmother for the job is a man.
I'd love you to tell me where you hid my...
Help me, Murray!
Help you! Help me!
You see that?
Martin Short,
Have wand, will travel.
Mara Wilson,
Shaboom!
Kathleen Turner.
You are talking to the future queen of darkness here.
This summer, your wish is his command. Sorta.
Rabbi, it's in the same ballpark.
A simple wish.
Do you realize if he spits now, we're goners?
Hello there, Richard the Film Geek here, and I'm here to give you guys my review of the 1997 children's fantasy comedy fairy tale classic, A Simple Wish, which was written by someone named Jeff Rothberg, was technically the final film to be directed by Michael Ritchie, who gave us The Bad News Bears, as well as The Candidate with Robert Redford before his death in 2001, and stars Matilda herself, Mara Wilson, Martin Short, Kathleen Turner, aka the voice of Jessica Rabbit herself in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Robert Pastorelli, Amanda Plummer, aka Honey Bunny from the beginning of Pulp Fiction, Terry Garr, and Ruby Dee. The story of A Simple Wish basically plays out as a supposedly satirical deconstruction of the fairy godmother character from Cinderella, as opposed to, well, obviously, the villainous fairy godmother from Shrek 2. Predominantly takes place in 1990s New York, and is about an 8-year-old girl named Annabelle who makes a wish for her widowed carriage driver father Oliver to bag the lead role in a Broadway stage musical adaptation of Charles Dickens's A Tale of Two Cities, and ends up meeting a hilariously quirky, eccentric, and incompetent buffoon of a male fairy godmother named Murray, who makes it his one mission to ensure that Annabelle's wish comes true. Except Murray accidentally leaves his wand behind, the wand gets broken, his spells start to go horribly wrong, one of which accidentally turns Annabelle's father into a bronze Central Park statue. And in order to lift this spell and save her father from remaining a statue forever by midnight, Annabelle and Murray, along with Annabelle's older brother Charlie, must retrieve all the other fairy godmother's stolen wands from the clutches of a disgraced former fairy godmother turned evil sorceress named Claudia, and her half-dog, half-human minion named Boots. Hilariously not to be confused, obviously, with Boots the Talking Monkey from Dora the Explorer. So now that I've rewatched this movie for really the first time since my adolescence, here are my thoughts on A Simple Wish. Well, at least on the technical surface, this is undeniably a bad movie with laughably atrocious writing, a story that is messy, unfocused, and all over the place, direction by the late Michael Ritchie that is frankly just as messy, unfocused, and all over the place, acting that is kind of generally a mixed bag at best in my opinion, which I am going to get into in a moment, characters that are not really very likeable, interesting, memorable, or relatable on any deeper level. Comedy and jokes that fall incredibly flat, one of which concerning a 50-foot giant human rabbi in particular, you especially cannot get away with in today's world. Obviously cheesy and dated CGI effects, some of which I'm genuinely surprised to find out were some of the very first pieces of computer animation to effectively be done by the house that Scrat built, known as Blue Sky Studios itself, and a rather anticlimactic good versus evil showdown that takes forever to get going, doesn't really ultimately lead to anywhere when it happens, comically devolves into a late 90s visual effects showcase concerning Mara Wilson and Martin Short being turned into dancers against their will, Amanda Plummer being turned into a real dog, Martin Short being flattened against the window like a cartoony pancake, and Kathleen Turner accidentally zapping and trapping herself inside a mirror, and thus doesn't really have enough of a satisfying payoff to speak of, or at least one that doesn't really feel earned in the end, and is especially fundamentally cutesy fluff just for the sake of being cutesy fluff. In other words, this is a movie that I should normally class as a disaster piece in almost every sense of the word, right? Wrong! However, all that being said, and despite it initially looking like I'm ranting on this movie right now, it should really surprise you to know that this is actually the very first guilty pleasure movie I'm reviewing on the channel. Not to mention one which I honestly have very fond memories of watching on VHS when I was a kid growing up in the late 90s and early 2000s. And yes, call me crazy, but despite of course acknowledging its very obvious flaws, and in other words, despite acknowledging even today that it is bad, I still really legit enjoy this movie for what it is. And I, for one, am in no way going to apologise for having this hot take. I'm really sorry. But for me, A Simple Wish is one of these movies that is so charmingly and adorably bad on its own merits, but you still don't care regardless, and can still very easily spend an hour and a half on a rainy Sunday afternoon with your brain turned off and the goofiest smile on your face. As I briefly stated earlier, the acting here is generally a mixed bag. Francis Capra as the older brother is kind of legit terrible in this movie, and not really that much different to his prior performance in Kazam. Terry Garr, Ruby Dee, and especially Amanda Plummer are kind of underutilized and or wasted here, and only being given, unfortunately, thankless roles with nothing really that much to work with. Despite having a surprisingly good singing voice, Robert Pastorelli is actually not too bad as the father. He does do an okay job, and the scene where he has a heart-to-heart conversation with Mara Wilson's character is probably remotely the most emotionally interesting moment in the entire movie. Speaking of which, actually, while admittedly nowhere near as impressive with this performance as with her roles in Mrs. Doubtfire and especially Matilda, to her credit, Mara Wilson does a fairly good acting job here, especially given the fact that at the time she was going through such a tough time in her early life behind the scenes, largely due to her sadly losing her mother to breast cancer shortly before Matilda was released, as well as her understandably growing tiredness and disillusionment with Hollywood executives constantly typecasting her in these cutesy roles and constantly trying to make her into the next Judy Garland or Shirley Temple. Hence why she ultimately quit acting altogether after making Thomas and the Magic Railroad. Not to even mention as well that when she is first introduced in this movie, she is seen wearing stereotypically girly girl pink clothes, which is in very stark contrast, by the way, to real life snarky, tomboyish, nerdy, extremely intelligent, humorous, and really badass personality. But really, it's these last two performances that I will go as far on the record in my rather unpopular opinion to say are true standouts in this movie. The first one being, and boy am I ready for the hate comments on here, Martin Short. Now, hear me out. On the one hand, I do understand why people would really dislike, be frustrated, and or be turned off with abject annoyance by this particular performance. I mean, after all, this basically is an hour and a half of Martin Short just mugging around like an idiot with this goofy, almost drunken smile on his face and trying way too hard to be funny with silly voices and silly pratfalls. But on the other hand, however, it's this exact ridiculousness, as well as Martin Short's uniquely oddball and eccentric comedic timing, that bizarrely manages to make this performance work more than it otherwise has any right to. You can clearly tell how much of a blast he probably had behind the scenes with giving this stupid and ridiculous, yet at the same time weirdly charming, bonkers and entertaining performance that consistently has me laughing my arse off like a naughty schoolboy. Plus, you almost get the sense at times that other than obviously looking like the Doctor, if they secretly happened to be one of the professors at Hogwarts, this character was probably originally written with Rowan Atkinson's Mr. Bean in mind. Like, this movie was probably originally intended to be the real first Mr. Bean movie, as opposed to, well, the one we got that year. Plus, one wouldn't exactly be too surprised if it turns out that the recurring spell that Martin Short's character casts in this movie, Shaboom, was actually meant to be a little Easter egg or reference by the filmmakers to the fairy godmother's recurring spell in Disney's Cinderella, Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo. The only other obvious standout here is Kathleen Turner as the villain. Granted, her character's overall motivation and scheme obviously doesn't really make sense whatsoever, and is just as profoundly basic as you'd expect. It's almost like she looked at this script and thought, wow, this sounds ridiculous and stupid, but you know what? I'm still going to sign that dotted line and have a lot of fun with this role. And indeed have a lot of fun in this role. She absolutely does. As well as be delightfully, entertainingly over the top. Almost to the point where at times she's literally channeling her inner classic Disney villain. Literally chews up the scenery and almost completely outperforms the rest of the cast in this movie. In conclusion, nearly 28 years on from its original theatrical release, A Simple Wish is ridiculous, stupid, messy, unfocused, not very funny most of the time, purely cutesy for the sake of being cutesy, and just as cheesy, formulaic, and generic as late 90s kids movies go, but also nonetheless still remains, in my honest yet unpopular opinion, to be a weirdly inoffensive, oddly charming and watchable and bizarrely entertaining guilty pleasure. If you're in the mood for a thought-provoking family film or a kids film that makes you think about story ideas and themes in general, this is definitely probably not the movie for you. However, if you're looking for a simple kids film to watch while you're babysitting and or legitimately requires you to turn your brain off for at least an hour and a half, and just enjoy and or embrace the absurdity of the experience, then I guess I probably wouldn't have a problem recommending this to you. And with all that being said, my overall rating for A Simple Wish is going to be a reasonably low 6.5 out of 10.
Put them together and what have you got? Bippity boppity boo. Sa la 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 la. Bippity boppity boo. Put them together and what have you got? Bippity boppity boo.
Don't forget to do the following few things as always. Leave a comment below. Let me know your thoughts on A Simple Wish. Subscribe to my channel, click on the little bell to receive any emailed notifications and or updates from my channel. If you haven't already, you can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Letterboxd and Blue Sky. Do take care everyone, and shaboom!
Falagadoola means minchikabooraroo. But the thingamabob that does the job is bippity boppity boo. Sa la 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 la. Bippity boppity boo. Put them together and what have you got? Bippity boppity. Bippity boppity. Bippity boppity boo.